Welcome back to the Fulfilled Female Entrepreneur Podcast. It's your host, Cassandra Rosa. I'm a certified coach and healer and intuitive business coach, and the mission behind all that I do is to help you to create a fulfilling life in business. I'm so excited to be chatting with Megan Mendez today about getting out of debt and shifting the debt mindset. Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. I'm so excited to have Megan here. We actually just recorded an episode for her podcast. So we're going to leave a link in the show notes or in this video for you to go and check it out. We're really excited to get into today's topic. But first, I want to thank you, Megan, for coming on. I'm so excited to continue the momentum that we just created here on the other side now.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Our podcast was awesome, so I'm excited to chat on this one as well.
Yes. And I'm excited to introduce you to Megan. She's a former high school math teacher who pursued a full-time entrepreneurship and used freelancing and going debt-free as her ticket out of the classroom. She's a girl mom, wife, lover of sourdough and all things holistic health. And she loves getting to help people start their online business and help them use that online business to elevate their financial goals. She has an amazing podcast. We're going to leave a link to it in the show notes and all the beautiful ways for you to connect with her.
Yay.
That's so cool that you're a teacher and that you used, all of your personal experience to be able to, shift out of that and do something that you love and help others to do the same. That's amazing.
Yeah, well, we talked about this on mine a little bit too, but going to school for teaching, and then I did that for 4 years and realized quickly that was not where I was supposed to be and what I was supposed to be doing. But I've known for a very long time that I was called to teach. But at the time, it felt like I was walking away from that career path completely. And so that was very overwhelming. But as I entered into the online space, I realized that I am still teaching and I can still teach. It just doesn't have to look like a typical brick and mortar classroom where I have, 120 kids a day. So that mindset shift has been fun. And then being able to use my story to help us go debt free was icing on the cake.
So incredible. And it's funny, I didn't mention this on your podcast, but that was one of my possible career paths was, should I be a teacher?
Really?
Should I be a psychologist? And then boom, like in life coaching has almost been two worlds coming
Yes.
together. It's hilarious. But I would love to hear a little bit more about fulfillment for you. What does that truly mean to you? And what's the most fulfilling part of your work that you do now?
So I think being fulfilled is just to be truly happy and loving what you're doing. And it doesn't mean that every day is a perfect day or even a good day, but we kind of mentioned this too at the end of the day or at the end of our podcast of just like everybody is fed, the house is clean and picked up, and you have a nice warm bed to go to. You didn't let your business crash and burn. You didn't let your family crash and burn. Like you kept everybody alive. And at the end of the day, you have all that you could ever possibly want and need. And for me, that is all that I have ever asked for and I've ever wanted. And so at the end of the day, if my husband can come home to me and we can put our daughter down to bed together and eat a nice meal and go to bed, that is perfect. That is so fulfilling for me. That's all I've ever wanted, was to be able to be an entrepreneur and a full-time mom at the same time. And so being happy in all that you do, but happy is kind of relative and can be kind of flexible depending on the season or the kind of day that you had. And then what was the other part of your question? What is fulfilling in my business?
Yeah. What's the most fulfilling part of your work? Yeah.
So I love getting to assist and help people on their debt-free journey because I have gone debt-free myself, and I know the impact that it can have on a family, a marriage, on future financial decisions. And so being able to walk other moms and women through that same type of path, I know the type of I know how freeing it can be. And so that is so incredibly fulfilling to me that I can help others do what I've been able to do and the results I've been able to see from that.
I love that. And I want to start kind of where you started talking about fulfillment. I love the messaging that you made about like the simplicity of your house being clean, even though when it may not feel simple, or your kids being fed. I think that's such a powerful kind of definition to share with people of that part is fulfilling, especially for moms, that are going through it. Maybe they're new moms, and I know a lot of moms listen here. So that's a wonderful reminder. And I love to hear and see how, your process of going debt free, now you're helping other people do it and being able to create a ripple effect, because that will affect families and moms and people's mindset and mental health in such exponential ways. And I'm excited to unpack that with you today, because I think what I really love for us to kind of go deep in is really about, yes, there's, the practical steps of going debt free, but how your mindset can contribute to that experience. So you do kind of want to touch on that with your personal experience of how maybe, having a shift in mindset really allowed you to achieve the results that you have of going
Yeah.
debt.
Yeah, and I would say the number one thing that I did was I made the decision to, and I told my husband, I said, this year we are paying off all of this debt and we're being done with it. Like we're moving forward. And so that right there is half the battle of just being, I'm probably a little stubborn, I guess, because I was like, no, we're done. Like I don't want to deal with this anymore. And so being stubborn in a good way of like setting your mind to something and not accepting no for an answer, that was the number one thing I did. And I knew it was crazy. I knew people were going to think I was crazy, but I did not care. I was like, we can pay off 50 plus $1,000 this year and we're going to do it. And so that was the first thing. But then I would say the things that I did day to day, and this is something that I do even now post debt free, but would write down the things that I'm thankful for every single day. And so maybe that was that we got to send, 500 extra dollars to our credit card that month or whatever it may be. But writing down those things that I'm thankful for and then writing down my daily affirmations. And one of those was, we will be debt free by the end of 2021, I think is what I probably wrote down. And so saying those to myself every single day was helpful. And I'm sure I had, other ones as well, but they all were kind of intertwined with what our goals were. And those have shifted now that we are debt free and now that I'm in motherhood. But the same tactic still works and is still very powerful. So that would be the second thing that I would suggest people to do. And
Mhm.
then more of like the logistic things that some people can do and walk away from that would be to check their bank accounts. I was a little crazy, if you can imagine, but I would check our bank accounts daily just to make sure that there was no unwanted charges, just to make sure that I knew what was going in and out of my account. And I say that because some people get very overwhelmed when they don't look at it for a couple of days and now they've got 20 charges and they're like, oh my gosh, what is all this? Why are we spending money? And that's how they can get themselves overwhelmed and get themselves in a bigger hole than they are. And so checking the bank accounts daily, and then also budgeting daily with our app, or if you do a paper budget. I know I have a paper budget that I have given people and they've used that, or people even do like an Excel spreadsheet, whatever it is, just documenting those expenses and those transactions in there so that you can see what's going in and out. And so for me, it was like a control thing. I wanted to have complete and total control of that. And so that was one of the ways that I did that. So I would say those three things that I just said, would be the main steps of how I stayed strong in my mindset, and for the 12 months that we really pushed to go debt free.
No, I love that. You've already shared so many powerful tips that I think are so important. I think that awareness piece of checking and checking in and having that understanding is so huge, because a lot of people have this avoidant kind of
Mm-hmm.
perspective when it comes to money. And I want to kind of hear from you. What are some of the mindset pieces, like when you have your clients come to you, start working with you? What are the loops that people are in, that contribute to their debt, right? Because I'm a firm believer of what happens in your internal world is what reflects on the outside, right? So, is there any like big major loops or like major limiting beliefs that contribute to people staying in debt and attracting that into their life, if you will?
Hmm. I think people believe they have more money than they actually do. And maybe that's because of credit cards and the drama that they can cause, but people believe they have more money than they actually can spend. And so because they have access to credit cards, they're like, "Oh, it's okay. We want to go out for dinner. That's fine. Let's just put it on the credit card." But they don't actually have that money. And if you have a budget, for $5,000 a month and you have got $500 spent or going towards, eating out, that's fine. You can afford it because you've allocated that money in your budget. But for the people that don't have a budget, for the people that have already overspending and they're like, oh no, it's fine, let's just go out to have fun, they're spending borrowed money, and then they look back, a couple months later, and they're like, wow, we've racked up $5,000 on our credit card. We really didn't have that money in the first place, and now they've dug themselves in a really bad hole. And so sometimes when people dig themselves in that hole, they're at this crossroad of like, okay, I'm going to keep digging, or I realize this is a problem and I'm going to stop digging. And for most people, it's they don't see the problem, or they don't want to see the problem. And so they just keep digging, and they're like, we'll figure it out later. We'll figure it out later. And that can be so hard, because then, more months down the road, now you're $10,000 in debt, and you're like, okay, at some point you get fed up and you're ready to stop the cycle. But I would say, think people believe that they have more money to spend than they actually do, because they are not looking at the numbers like they should be.
Yes. I think that's a really key thing of saying that credit cards are borrowed money. It's
Mm-hmm.
not money and funds available for you to use if you haven't allocated in your budget about that, which
Mm-hmm.
I think is huge. And is there any like limiting beliefs that people have that kind of keep them in that loop, for like their own relationship with debt specifically, that you found that maybe in your own life or the lives in your clients that you feel like kind of keep them in that pattern?
And I think a lot of it can be translated, or a lot of it can come from how they grew up and how they saw their relationship with money from their parents and their lifestyle,
Mhm.
which is a whole nother avenue that we could go down. But I think too, a lot of people believe that sometimes it's because of the way they grew up and the way that they saw their family use and value money, that now they believe that that's their future too, and that that's how they should do it, or that's how they have to do it, or they're going to be stuck in that same pattern. But I think for some people, they don't believe that they can change their spending habits, or they don't want to change their spending habits. And so I think that that's really hard. Is they're like, well, I'm already in debt now, so I'm not going to be able to get out of it. It's just too hard, and so it's not for me. Or for the business owners out there, they're like, I will never be able to make 10K months, or whatever X amount of money they want to make a month. So I'm just going to continue doing what I'm doing here, and I'll bring home whatever I can bring home, and we'll just have to scrape by, which that reality isn't true as well. Like, you have the possibility to make however much you want. It just depends on, how hard you're willing to work for it. So,
Right, right. And I think that those are big things. And I've seen, moments in my life that I've had those thoughts, or, people that I know, whether it's friends that are also kind of in the industry or entrepreneurship, or, even clients kind of going through those loops. So, what do you think is a way, like a practical way that people can flip the switch of like, hey, they may have these limiting beliefs that you've shared, or hey, they had negative money stories because of the way that they grew up. How can they be able to kind of shift into more of an abundant mindset, which will, perhaps be the catalyst of them getting out of debt in the physical world for themselves too?
I like that you said abundant mindset, because, and I feel like I have two parts here. Some people don't think that they make enough money. And so they're like, we're always going to be broke. We're always going to be in debt, you know. But I think it's living within your means, and like, okay, if I've got, $5,000 a month that I'm making, when you actually sit down and look at the nitty gritty of it all, you can do a lot with that specific amount of money. And that it's very general and very person by person. But if you really sit down and look at it and see, okay, what can I do with the money that I'm given for right now? And if you, need to get an extra part-time job, if you're looking for other clients, whatever it may be, you can increase that money. But what do I have right at this moment, and how am I spending that money? And I do understand, for some people, at the end of the day, it is what it is, and their expenses just outweigh how much they make. And that's hard, and that it's not getting any better in the economy that we're living in right now. But if you look at it from, wow, I'm blessed to be able to have $5,000 a month. Now, how am I spending my money so that I can use that wisely? And so looking at, what are the things that I need to make sure that I have a roof over my head, food on the table every single night, and clothes on my back. And then looking at those wants and other things that you maybe probably could sacrifice for a short period of time to get you to your overall end goal. So looking at it from the sense of, wow, I am able to bring X amount of money home to my family, as opposed to, wow, I only bring home X amount of money, that's not nearly enough.
Right, right. That's huge. Of really being in acceptance and appreciating for what you have and allocating what you have currently available, money entering your bank account, not like credit cards available, to be able to have that as a springboard. And so if people are listening and they're starting to understand and unpack, this sounds familiar to me. I know these stories, these tips are starting to really unlock this way. And they're like, okay, so like now what? Like, what are some ways that I can start? Like if there was like a plan of 3 steps that they could take to be able to be debt free in a quicker amount of time that they imagined, maybe like you within the span of a year, what would you say are like some baby steps that they can take to start to get the ball rolling?
And I think this is where you kind of come into play too, because a lot of people's spending habits are because they're not fulfilled in something that they're doing. And so they're like, okay,
Mhm.
well, I'm going to go shopping and buy myself $500 worth of clothes. That's going to make me feel better. I'm going to go eat out XYZ. That's going to make me feel better. And so if people can identify their spending habits and the relationship that they have with fulfillment, I think
Mhm.
that is going to be a big game changer, because you don't need to spend money on things to make you feel to have be fulfilled and to have fulfillment. Instead, you can do other things which I feel like you can help them on and help them navigate that. And so if they can be fulfilled in their life, then their spending habits can be better changed and better adjusted. And so that, I would say, is one of the tips, is figuring out, why are you spending money on these things that you know you cannot afford? And it's probably because you're lacking fulfillment in other areas. So how can I be fulfilled in those other areas of life, so that then my spending can improve? The next thing I would say is, stop avoiding the numbers, look at it and just write everything down. Get a spreadsheet out and write out, all of your fixed expenses, your rent, your car payment, your insurance, etc., and look at what those numbers actually are, and see, how much you're actually spending. And then look at the variable expenses, eating out, groceries, gas, etc., and then look at anything else that you may have, like credit card debt, or student loans or anything like that. And just really documenting all of the things that you have to spend money on every single month. And then the last thing would be, see if, try to create a rough budget. And it doesn't have to be, a budget is so flexible and doesn't have to be set in stone or do or die, or if you go over, you fail. Like, it's very flexible, and it's just like a guideline for you to kind of follow, so that when you are tempted to overspend or to go spend money on something that you probably can't afford, that you just kind of take a pause and look at what you can afford to spend and be like, okay, do I need to do this right now? Yes or no? And so doing those 3 things, I think, can be so beneficial for somebody that is wanting to get started on their debt-free journey, because once you know those numbers, then you can say, okay, now I can make a plan for my debt, because I know I have $500 extra dollars a month, or I know that I'm spending $500 extra dollars a month. And so I'm going to continue to get myself in debt. So now I can take that pause and take that stop of like, okay, let's just get ourselves back to zero, to where we're just breaking even. And then we'll worry about paying off the debt later. Let's just stop overspending.
Mm. So good. So good. I think that those awareness pieces are key. And I absolutely love how you tied it in with fulfillment. Because
Mm-hmm.
the more that I've realized that I've been developing myself and investing my money in myself, it made me realize how little material things you actually need,
Yep.
how much material things you actually need. And I remember like seeing people in my own life, because I remember when I was working my 9 to 5 and in business, I was like, okay, I have these funds, I want to invest it in myself. And I realized how my spending habits used to change. Like I wasn't buying like new outfits for every like occasion, and you know, um, having to go and eat out all of the time. It made me realize how deeply that is connected of fulfillment and of materialism, right? Because I
Mm-hmm.
found that I've been such more leaner with my spending when it comes to the material things outside of my needs. and it's completely changed, how my financial situation has unfolded, which is huge. So I love that you shared that. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
And
that makes me think of like being when I was in the classroom teaching and feeling very unfulfilled. My spending habits then and my spending habits now are vastly different because of what
right,
you just said. And so it's something that's good to think about.
right, totally. A win for us.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about your podcast?
Yeah. So the Debt Free CEO really kind of talks about a couple of things. It talks about how people can get started with freelancing or an online business, and it talks about how people can use that business to help them go debt free. And then we also just talk about, strategies to help with debt payoff, whether that be budgeting, whether that be specific debt payoff strategies or tips and tricks. It's kind of a little broad in the sense, but you're going to learn, you're going to hear from some guest speakers and their experiences. And then you're also going to hear from me and learn a little bit about my journey, and then how I have used different things in business to help us with our finances and to help us go debt free.
I love that. I love that. So we're going to leave a link in the show notes or in the video that you're watching, so you can go and tune in and listen. And is there anywhere else that you would like them to connect with you to learn more about everything that you have going on in your world and how you're making an impact?
Yeah, so my social media on Instagram and TikTok is just Megan Mendez __. And I've got a link in bio there for you to check out some free resources that I have, the podcast, etc. And then my website's also meganmendez.com. But basically, you can just search my name and you'll be able to find something that pops up for me where you can connect with me
Amazing. Or even easier, just go to the show notes or into the
at.
yeah, and just click the links. They're all going to be there. I want to
Yes.
thank you, Megan. You just shared so many powerful tips for people, which I think is huge. And I think the biggest takeaway I've taken is just start with self-awareness when it comes to
Hmm.
your finances. That is something huge to be able to be a catalyst for the growth. So any final words you want to share before we wrap up today?
No, thank you so much for having me on. This was great even for me, just this dialogue that we had in the conversation that we had about self-awareness and how that can impact our spending and our debt-free journey. And so it's just some good little nuggets to think about here. So I hope that they enjoy, and you'll have my information. So if you have any questions or want to chat further, let me know.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you'll be notified every time I'll upload a new video on Thursday. See you in the next one. Bye.